All right. Hello, Michael. How are you?
I am doing great, Maggie. It's so happy. I'm so happy to be here.
Thanks. Well, welcome to the night shift. We provide support for parents day and night. And tonight, you have me on Mountain Time at 9 o'clock. And I'm super excited to chat with you in true night shift fashion about parent empowerment coaching and what you're up to and your global travels and your experience in working with families across cultures, a little bit how parents can help their BCBAs understand their culture and identifying those needs across cultural norms. But we're super excited to have you. Um, Tell us a little bit about you and tell us what you're focused on right now.
Sure, I'm happy to do that. And so, my previous chapter, because lives lived in chapters, I used to run a behavior clinic that had speech and occupational therapy. I ran it for 13 years. And then at that point, I sold that company. And I actually got into some other things. So, I am certified as an executive coach. I like to help entrepreneurs and help executives with big things, big problems. I do have some background in systems development, called Lean Six Sigma. But I kept feeling the gravity of my previous chapter. So my previous chapter, we worked with almost 1,000 kids in those 13 years.
Wow.
And I still kept getting phone calls from parents that they can't find resources for their kids. Or people would know that I work with kids with autism. And the same questions and concerns when I first went into the field, 20 something years later, they were the exact same issues.
Oh,
Um, and so I think that really started to kind of turn my focus and say, what can we do in terms of lots of us to really solve something that needs lots of assistance? Parents should not have to fight to get diagnosed, fight to get services, and fight to get good information. So me and my colleague, Dr. Shrey Chin, we started parent empowerment coaching. And really what it is, it's just focused on the parent side of building a good plan. Because we can't count on where you live, if there's good services or the school district. But for us, to me, that was the biggest A to B. If a parent can understand how to set a goal, how to create an environment where any child can learn, and the parent can have the confidence that they can teach their child important skills, that will give the parent and the child the best chance for success. And so that's what we're currently doing. And that's what we're excited about helping, not only just on the Western side of the world, but pretty much anywhere.
that's very cool. I'm loving that kind of like PRT like take on parent training because what you said there specifically about if a parent can learn how to set a goal for their child, if a parent can learn how to break those things down for their child, like they can do that across many, many different skills, many, many different goals that the family has over the child's lifetime. And I think so much of that, on the provider end, right? We see the kids for a short period of their life, and the parents are there their whole life. And it's really important that they have that skill. Absolutely. And yeah, I know earlier we were talking offline, but tell me or give our listeners an idea of where you've been in the globe, and then tell us a little bit about um, working across like different cultures and like what has been your biggest epiphany to say or anything else like that, and how does that feed into what you guys are doing now?
Absolutely. So, of course, my colleague, she started in China, spent most of her time in the United States. So even when we started this, we wanted something that was as user-friendly to as many people as possible. And so I started first spending a lot of time in Mexico. And part of it was just seeing what's out there and just curious. I
Yeah.
didn't have anything to sell. I didn't know the language, although my Spanish is getting a little bit better. But for me as a behaviorist, I think it was just really understanding. We know for those that are in, like the United States, Canada, that a lot of people are struggling with services. So then the thought is, are we the only ones? Is there other models that work? So I think that was the thesis that I had. So I went to Mexico, I went to Argentina, Peru, Colombia, Asia. So as we speak right now, I'm in Tokyo, Japan, but I've spent time in Vietnam, spent time in Thailand, Japan, and then I'll be in Korea. And so the biggest epiphany, I guess, the positive and the downside. The biggest positive is there's so much care and passion of the parents to help their kid.
Yeah.
And I think, to me, that's the big paradox. All parents, no matter special needs or not, are going to do everything. They will move a mountain if they can to help their kiddo. So there's always an ability to have a lot of motivated people who are trying to solve a complicated issue.
Yeah.
So that's a good side I saw everywhere. The downside, there is not one country on this planet that has it figured out to truly help these kids.
Yeah.
And to me, that's sobering. I haven't visited all the countries, but as much as some of the Western part of the United States struggles, it has the best system by far. And it's not even, there are a couple places that are a little decent, but I mean, to me, that was sobering.
Yeah.
And so I think I really had to look back and go, okay, well, how do we help someone that's in the middle of Africa who cares about their kid just like everyone else and wants to do things? And so when we started to create parent empowerment coaching, that helped to kind of center our focus. And ultimately what we did is we shrunk the menu of what parents should work on for their kiddo. Yeah. And if you can get a parent to see the things that, not exactly how we see it, but be objective about what they're seeing, try the experiment, any type of action, and then get them a chance to reflect through data, through thought, that creates the loop. And that loop actually works for all humans. So we really took the quote unquote skills of ABA and we really are just shaping mom to her empowerment stages. And I think that gave us something that we could latch onto. And then lots of trial and experiment. But that's kind of the pros of what I've seen so far in culture. And then, of course, some of the drawbacks of not really getting there yet as a society and as, humanity.
Yeah. You said some interesting things there too. And I just want to kind of ask a follow-up question. So do you feel like, you said Western culture is likely to have more like maybe built out models or best system thus far for providing services for these kids, kids on the spectrum specifically, or children with disabilities in general? Like, do you feel like that is a societal perspective, like because of that, the way that we view, or what do you like chalk that up to?
Yes, that would be my thesis. Is you think of anything that changes over time, because humans, we're always evolving, but sometimes we evolve slow.
Yeah.
So whether it's accepting people for their gender or their race or anything else, there's an adoption curve. And so we have that in autism. There's the awareness phase, there's acceptance. I can't remember the third one. I'll say advocacy, one of the next ones.
Yeah.
So the United States is probably like stage 3.
Yeah.
And so what that means is about 30 to 40 years of people have slowly realized what autism is. And so sometimes you even get that kind of pushback, when people are putting posts of autism awareness and people are like, we're not at that stage. But most of the world is at the awareness stage.
Got it.
And they're just starting, some are different areas of awareness, to recognize autism is not, demonic. Autism is not this thing, but it's a neurological issue that can with good intervention make progress.
Yeah.
And so I think it's really just more about the adoption curve. And I
Okay.
think that I can track well. Literally the more I found research, I mean, there was some cities, like we're talking 8 million, I barely could find anything about autism. And I don't
Wow.
know if it was language or not or different, but I think there's still so much left on the awareness stage on the global that that's where we're kind of on the awareness stage for everywhere, just because of seeing that need of just
Mm.
knowing that these kids actually can make steady improvement.
Yeah. And it's such a profound example of, when you look outside of just your own backyard, right?
Mhm.
And you really are widening that perspective in terms of, what we know to be true versus what the rest of the world sees and experiences. Um, what skills do you feel like you had to develop as a result of like those like epiphanies and observances?
For me, I'm happy that not only am I a behavior analyst, but I'm really happy I have these other disciplines, kind of the
Yeah,
systems. So if you tell me what I am now, I'm really a systems thinker. To me, everything's a system. Your
agreed.
body, your
Agreed.
city, and the more you can think of systems, systems have rules. And so we kind of looked at this from a very systems thinking perspective and really said, what is the smallest way we can build momentum for the parent is kind of like the top line fundamental.
Cool.
So it's really thinking of what are the core skills if the child is a little younger. It's saying, we're not doing the whole menu. Imitation, direction following, identifying the nouns around, looking at motivation, and looking about contingencies. If you can teach almost any human those core skills, the child or the young adult has a chance to learn.
Yeah,
So we try to root as many things as possible into physics, math, and biology
I love it.
because those don't change over people's opinions. Those don't change even in culture. So we said, okay, what even drives, through even cultural issues?
Yeah,
I am so happy the number two is the number two everywhere. And so that's where we kind of really hit in on the smallest amount of success, the smallest. And so we talk a lot for our company about fight for 15 minutes. And so what we encourage parents is for 15 minutes a day, work on something small. And it can
Mhm.
be just observe your child without judgment is one of the things
Uh,
that we do. So letting
yeah,
the head
love
circle
that.
around, get curious about what your child can do is a one day. And then another day, it's just how much can you make your child giggle? And that's the only criteria. So what we're doing is we're trying to build the curiosity again. And now as the parents can be objective about what they see, then that creates the action step for them to follow through is where we've been seeing some good success for parents.
That's really cool. I really love that curiosity piece, which I'm sure also is like so driven from, your experience in leadership as well. Like we always talk about like curiosity and making sure that that's what we're coming from when we're looking to solve problems as well. And I really love that teaching of that skill because sometimes as parents, we're so busy and, making that dinner and shuffling the other kids and trying to get bath time done and, trying to sit down for 10 minutes before maybe even reading a book. Those kinds of things are leisurely for parents, young children, parents with kids who have disabilities or anything like that, or really just parents in general. But I think that you can really hone in on the way that your child responds to your environment at home um, when you're given that prompt. And like, hey, you know what? Just go and watch your child and see what happens. Like, don't judge them for what they're doing if they're stimming or if they're like watching TV and doing math homework, or they're, engaged in any other activity, watch what they're doing in those action moments. And, if they can answer, hey, like, what's going on? Great. If they can't, write down what you see. I really, really love that, because I think that, again, so much of parenting sometimes gets us caught up in that. And we don't stop to smell the roses, for lack of a better idiom,
Mhm.
and really take the time to kind of just step back and say, oh, that's what's happening. I'm guilty of this as well with my own child. And she just happily tells me, "You're missing the point, Mom." That's what I hear.
Yeah, it's at some point I would love to do a book about just you know the emotions are there's still a pattern. There's
Yes.
a behavioral formula for the outcomes, and so I think for us it's curiosity to clarity,
Mhm.
because it's the rain cloud, the clouds of all the thoughts. That's where most of us get stuck. Whether you have a kid with special needs, or you're an executive, or you're a 3-year-old who wants the candy bar,
Yeah.
clarity is kind of that first step. So getting them curious helps them realize they can evolve.
Yeah.
Then it's to help them get clarity to then decide what's their thesis, what's the experiment, what they're trying to improve. Then the next hurdle is the action. So each one's its own hurdle. But when we get parents in the action stage, so that's why it's the 15 minutes. Just 15
Nice.
minutes a day. And now when a human goes into action, that really is when momentum is built. And so that's physics. I do think it's great that we have the time to think, but change rarely happens without the action step, the
100%.
verbs. So we
Mhm.
try to get people to the verb. And then that last point is the reflection piece of, hey, it wasn't so bad. I know they hate the green beans, but he didn't spit all of them out. Two stayed in. And that goes back into curiosity. I wonder if, from reflection, goes right back into curiosity. And that's the positive feedback loop that gets a parent to start to stabilize their system.
Nice.
And of course, there's the other side of it. When it doesn't work, then we have the negative feedback loop, which tends to people to spiral into inaction or inertia. So it's, and trying to look at it from that sense of thinking, that gives us our clarity so that we can really try the experiments in a way that has usefulness no matter where we apply it.
Wow. That's very cool. I really like the way that you have that systematically set up. And like you said, you're a systems person, but it makes sense for a parent to think through it that way. When you guys are training parents, are you guys using a lot of behavior analytic jargon? Like, are you guys really diving into those things? Because one of the curious things that I have seen in our field is a tendency, especially for behavior analysts, that are newer, like to write parent training goals that are very much like parent will learn how to take ABC data, or parent will, learn how to implement behavioral momentum. Very like specific things like that. Tell me kind of your thoughts on that, and like where you feel like you guys are bridging a gap.
I know for me, raise my hand. I've been there. I have
Sure,
over
we all have.
jargoned way too many parents, and and I always think they're gonna give the nod, and they're nodding their head, and it's just
It's gone.
and it's no fault to the parent,
Yeah.
you know. And we'll probably talk about stages of parents a little later. So we've tried, and we're kind of still keep iterating on that. It's like, for instance, in behavior terms, we use the word joint attention,
Hmm.
which is essentially two humans looking at the same thing and sharing thoughts, feelings, and emotions.
Yeah.
And so we kind of debate, should we use joint attention or should we use something else? And so that's something that we even wrestle with, but we really try to use the simplest language possible. And that's also because we now have different language barriers.
Yeah.
We're forced to, right? I don't know what joint attention would be in Spanish. I don't
Right.
know how that would even
No idea.
translate. It doesn't translate well in English, and I know English. So it's still a work in progress, but you're 100% correct. The jargon isolates, and I would even say a little stronger, it disempowers the parent that they can't help their kid.
Yeah.
And that is the last thing we need to do as providers, is to disempower the parent. That's the reason why we named the company, we named it. The parent has to have the confidence that they are still will always be the expert of their child. And that should be the high level, not kind of the other way around.
Yeah. I love that. And I think that having that emphasis on like observation and connection and action are foundational, because those things are um, not, or culture is not a barrier in those instances, right? We can all observe something. We can all, reflect on what we've seen, and what those experiences are. And I think when you are engaging with parents that way, it is a whole lot easier than trying to sit there and explain, okay, what is joint attention? Here's what it is. Here's what my textbook says it is. Um, so I love that. I really do. Um, well, tell me a little bit how you feel like families can help their BCBAs then. Um, what kind of flexibility do you feel like is needed on the clinician side? This much of our talks focus on like parent resources and things like that and what they can do. But I think this is really an important topic too, is also to give parents skills to be able to go to their providers and their clinicians and say, hey, like, this is important to me. This is why. This is what our family needs. This is why, Um, and so I'm just kind of curious to hear your thoughts on that.
So yes, we focus a lot on, you know, a bulk of the things can be applied universally, but we
Hmm.
also have to recognize culture is very important.
Hmm.
And we just can't go in and, as much as we like the physics, the biology, and the math, we have to recognize that in some cultures, you can approach, in a certain way. So, a way that a family can really help their provider is really be clear about what 2 to 4 cultural norms that are highly important. And there's the ones that must, meaning in this culture, this is a big taboo. And
Yeah.
then there's nice to haves. If they can give some clarity that way, I think that helps providers to be more strategic so that they don't cross, cultural norms. Because nothing's worse that you have good intentions, but because you're not paying attention to cultural norms, you're going to shut down a parent, a grandma. And when those things happen, you're not going to create the stable environment where a child can thrive.
Yeah.
So 2 to 4 as a good start, I think is really helpful.
Okay.
And on the provider side, you have to get the earliest win possible for that parent, because we spend so much time training them. We spend so much time talking to them. We don't
Yeah.
spend enough time helping them get their first win. And they get other wins in different places. But if you can, and I remember this from my previous chapter running a company, and I used to tell the BCBAs, we can never promise what a child can do. But if we say on day 1 what our goals are, and on day 30, we hit any of those goals, that parent is committed.
Yeah.
And then they show up to their meetings. They give us the information that the kid slept 2 hours or 6 hours.
Yes.
And I really push that they have to see that we know what we're talking about, but we can actually deliver the momentum. The parents have to get that. The earlier that they get it, now they're at the point when they're on the journey. The journey to me doesn't start till after the parent has their first really qualified win.
Yeah. I agree with you on that. I think that um, that creates some really significant buy-in, but not just that, it takes uh, a piece of that parental stress off the table. And so then it's like, when you're clearing up a foggy mirror. You start at one end, right? And you're kind of like wiping and wiping and wiping, and then the mirror is clear. I feel like it's much like that as well. When parents are able to kind of see through and past that cloud per se, and really get into, oh my gosh, this is what I've been missing, or I can see my child in a new way, or I can engage with my child in a way I have never been able to. Those are powerful things, and the fact that any of us are in a position to be able to do that with other humans, I think is really cool, and not just cool, but it's wonderful.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. And you said it best. For a provider, when you've been in the field a while, you can tell whether it's a parent. I do it when I coach. So these are
Yeah,
quote unquote high performers. You can tell when someone has absorbed the information
yeah,
and is starting to use it as a tool, and it changes in their face. When they come back the next day, now you can sense the curiosity. You can sense that ability. So that is that moment to try to get it. Um, and I think as a provider, it's to get good so you can get those moments. There's a lot of providers that takes, slowing things down and messages shifting. But I think we hit on something that's just an important lever. Without that piece, momentum, it's the spark to the
hmm
flame that you want to do. And I think getting that spark going is one of the hardest parts, but mandatory for success.
yeah, yes, absolutely. Well, Michael, can you share? Is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners tonight, and um, expound upon anything or point to any additional resources before we kind of wrap up?
Sure. So I want to talk just briefly to the provider side and also
Yeah,
for the parents, that from our informal research and theory, it's recognizing that all the parents, particularly moms, are at different stages.
mm,
And we can't, just the same way across cultures, I would argue is just as important on where the parent is in their journey, on
yeah,
how you go about helping. And we learned this kind of as we kept working with just different parents. And so, they're a little informal, but there's the overwhelm stage, new diagnosis, not
yeah,
sure what to do. Then there's a transition to we'll call it the research, the first step phase.
hmm
I'm going to actually do something about what's happening. There's the action phase or the starting of action. Then there's growth, and then there's empowered.
yeah,
And so, whether you are going through those stages or whether you're a provider, I think the more that we help nurture people through each stage and do things that are applicable for that stage. So, going back to that jargon question,
yeah,
and going back to any human, when any human's overwhelmed, defined by sensory overwhelmed,
mm,
emotionally overwhelmed, time management overwhelmed, as much as they want to help, that brain is not going to receive information.
right,
And so here we are just throwing data at someone that really just needs, a calm environment just to have the time to think.
yeah,
So I think we really have to be more specific and really hit on, here's this human in front of me. Where are they in their journey? And then how do I help walk with them instead of, hey, get up. Let me be right there. And then we'll walk through the stages together. It's something that I think we're lacking definitely on the provider side.
yeah,
But if you're in one of the stages, especially in those early stages, that overwhelm stage, there is a path to the other stages. And I think it comes through curiosity and clarity. So wherever you are and you feel stuck, I think those two paths start to help clear out some of that cloudiness. And I
hmm
think that gives you the ability to make good decisions for you and your child. So for us at Parent Empowerment Coaching, of course, we're working with parents throughout any of those stages to help them have better capabilities to help their child and to be a better advocate. And we also do some work with ABA companies, really with client onboarding
Hmm.
Let's make sure the clients get off to a good start.
Yeah.
And then, unfortunately, there's lots of waiting lists. So we've been trying to network with ABA companies of let us help your parent, especially when they're on the waiting list before services. And then once they're discharged, they still need someone to help keep the momentum of what's taking place going.
Yeah.
And so we have kind of the parent, which is kind of our big focus. And then we work with other providers so that no matter where the parent is, either getting therapy or not, they still have this way they can help their child and build that confidence.
That's fantastic. Yeah, and those are two very specific areas that I do think our field struggles with, um, from an ABA as a business standpoint. Absolutely, that onboarding, let's get started, and then that offboarding. What do we do with you when you only need 5 hours a week? What do we do with you when we only need just parent training, especially when you look at those models for comprehensive care or even focused care in the center, in the center setting, clinic setting, school setting, things like that. Those transitional pieces. So I think that's really important work. Um, so I'm really thankful to you and your partner and um, all of the things that you were learning as you were globally traveling. Um, we thank you here at Night Shift Autism and hope we get to chat again soon. Um, any last words?
Yeah. I've enjoyed this experience. Thank you for having me on. Um, I am excited that we are doing our part to work on something that will help lots of folks. So thank you for this opportunity.